The elevator lurched to a stop between the 7th and 8th floors of the Morrison building downtown, and that's when everything changed. What started as a routine Tuesday morning would become the most unexpected conversation of my life, all because I couldn't keep my mouth shut about someone's birthday cake in the break room. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. My name is Derek Sullivan, and at 35 I thought I had dating figured out. Spoiler alert. I didn't have anything figured out, especially when it came to women who could see right through my nervous jokes and awkward small talk. The day started normally enough. I was running late for my job at Meridian Financial Services, clutching my usual gas station coffee and mentally preparing for another mind-numbing day of reviewing insurance claims. The elevator was already crowded when I squeezed in, finding myself pressed against the back wall next to a woman I'd seen around the building but never actually spoken to. She worked somewhere on the upper floors. I'd noticed her before because she always carried herself with this confident stride that made her stand out in the sea of tired office workers. Auburn hair pulled back in a neat bun, sharp business attire, and these striking green eyes that seemed to take in everything around her. Today she was holding a small bakery box, the kind that usually held birthday cake or cupcakes. The elevator was packed with the usual morning crowd, Harold from accounting with his perpetual cough, Jenny from HR scrolling through her phone, and 3 guys from the law firm on the 15th floor discussing some cases in hushed tones. Everyone was doing that typical elevator dance of avoiding eye contact and staring at the floor numbers like they held the secrets of the universe. That's when my brain decided to betray me. "Someone's birthday?" I asked, nodding toward her bakery box. It was innocent enough, just making conversation. She smiled. Not the polite, closed-mouth smile most people give strangers, but a genuine one that reached her eyes. "Mine, actually. 49 today." Now here's where a smart person would have said, "Happy birthday," or "That's wonderful," or literally anything appropriate. But apparently, my mouth was operating independently of my brain that morning. 49? Wow, you're practically ancient. Should I be worried about you breaking a hip in this elevator? The words left my mouth before I could stop them. The entire elevator went silent. Harold stopped coughing. Jenny looked up from her phone. The lawyers stopped mid-sentence. I felt the blood drain from my face as I realized what I'd just said, to a complete stranger. But instead of the slap I probably deserved, or the icy silence that would have been completely justified, she threw her head back and laughed. Not a polite chuckle or an uncomfortable giggle, but a full, genuine belly laugh that echoed off the elevator walls. "Ancient," she said, still chuckling. "I'm 49, not dead yet. Though I appreciate the concern for my brittle bones." Her eyes sparkled with amusement rather than offense. "I take it you're one of those young whippersnappers who thinks life ends at 30? The elevator lurched then, a mechanical groan that made everyone grab for the handrails. The lights flickered. Once, twice, then went out completely, leaving us in the dim glow of the emergency lighting. "Well, this is perfect," muttered Harold. "I knew I should have taken the stairs," Jenny added, her phone's flashlight now illuminating her worried face. But the woman with the birthday cake, I still didn't know her name, seemed completely unfazed. "At least I brought snacks," she said, lifting the bakery box. "Though I'm not sure birthday cake counts as emergency rations." "Depends on what kind of cake it is," I replied, grateful for the dim lighting that hid my still-burning cheeks. "If it's chocolate, we might survive until rescue. If it's carrot cake, we're doomed." "Lemon pound cake with cream cheese frosting," she announced. "So, we're somewhere in the middle of the survival spectrum." One of the lawyers pressed the emergency button, and a tinny voice crackled through the speaker. "Emergency services. How can we help you?" "We're stuck in elevator B between floors 7 and 8 in the Morrison building," the lawyer said. 6 people inside." "Copy that. We've got technicians on the way. Should have you out within the hour. Everyone okay there?" A chorus of confirmations echoed through the small space. An hour. I was trapped in an elevator for an hour with 5 strangers, including the woman I'd just insulted by calling her ancient. "Well," she said, settling down onto the floor with surprising grace, "might as well get comfortable. I'm Rebecca, by the way. Rebecca Chen." "Derek Sullivan," I replied, sliding down the wall to sit across from her. "And I'm really sorry about the age comment. My mouth has a tendency to engage before my brain catches up. Don't worry about it, Rebecca said, opening the bakery box. The sweet smell of lemon and vanilla filled the elevator. I've heard worse. Last week, someone at the grocery store asked if I qualified for the senior discount. I'm not even 50 yet. Harold had claimed a corner, muttering about missing an important meeting. Jenny was frantically texting, probably rearranging her morning appointments. The lawyers had huddled together, discussing whether this counted as billable hours. So what do you do here in the Morrison building? Rebecca asked, carefully cutting the pound cake with a plastic knife from the bakery. Insurance claims at Meridian. Financial, I said. Thrilling stuff. People lie about car accidents. I figure out they're lying, rinse and repeat. You? Marketing director at Pinnacle Communications, floor 12. We handle advertising campaigns for small businesses mostly. Not quite as exciting as catching insurance fraudsters, but it pays the bills. She handed me a piece of cake on a napkin. The frosting was perfect. Not too sweet, with just enough tang from the cream cheese to balance the lemon. This is incredible, I said after taking a bite. Thanks. I actually made it myself. Baking is my stress relief after dealing with clients who think a Super Bowl commercial budget can buy them a 30-second spot during the local news. You made this? From scratch? Hard to believe someone my advanced age can still operate an oven, she teased, raising an eyebrow. I nearly choked on my cake. I deserve that. But seriously, this is restaurant quality. You could sell these. I've thought about it, actually. Maybe when I retire in 30 years or so, assuming my ancient bones can still handle the kitchen work. The conversation flowed easier than I'd expected. Rebecca had this way of making everything seem lighter, more interesting. She told me about her daughter Emma, a college junior studying environmental science at UC Berkeley, about her weekend hiking trips in the Cascade Mountains, about the small vegetable garden she maintained in her backyard, where she grew the lemons for her cakes. I found myself sharing things I rarely talked about with anyone. How I'd originally wanted to be a teacher, but ended up in insurance after my dad's accounting firm went under. How I'd been single for 2 years after a relationship that ended when my ex decided she wanted someone more ambitious. How I spent most weekends reading mystery novels and avoiding the dating apps my friends kept pushing on me. Mystery novels? Rebecca asked. What's your favorite? Probably anything by Louise Penny. Her Inspector Gamache series is brilliant. You? Agatha Christie. Classic choice, though I've been working through some modern Nordic noir lately. The Sea Girl with the Dragon Tattoo series. Stieg Larsson. Good choice. Have you read any Joe Nesbo? Her eyes lit up. The Harry Hole series? I'm obsessed. Just finished The Snowman last week. We spent the next 20 minutes discussing plot twists and character development, debating whether modern crime fiction was better than the classics. Harold had apparently given up on his meeting and was dozing in his corner. Jenny had switched to playing games on her phone. The lawyers were still billing hours, now discussing a completely different case. You know, Rebecca said, this is the most interesting conversation I've had in months. Most people hear marketing director and either want to pitch me their business idea or complain about annoying advertisements. And most people hear insurance investigator and want to tell me about their claim that got denied 5 years ago, I replied. Though I have to admit, being trapped in an elevator wasn't on my list of networking strategies. Sometimes the best conversations happen when you're not trying to have them, she said. Like when someone insults your age and then you discover they have excellent taste in crime fiction. The emergency speaker crackled again. This is maintenance. We're making progress, but it's going to be another 30 minutes or so. Everyone still okay? We're fine, Rebecca called back. We've got cake and good company. She looked at me when she said it, and I felt something shift in my chest. This wasn't just polite elevator small talk anymore. There was something genuine happening here, something I hadn't felt in a long time. Can I ask you something? I said, surprised by my own boldness. Shoot. When I made that stupid joke about your age, why didn't you get angry? Most people would have been offended. Rebecca considered this for a moment, twirling a strand of hair that had escaped from her bun. Honestly? Because it was so ridiculous that it was almost endearing. You looked absolutely mortified the second it left your mouth. And besides, I've spent 49 years learning that life's too short to waste energy being offended by nervous jokes from cute guys in elevators. Cute guys. She'd called me cute. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time. So, if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Plus, she continued, I could tell you didn't mean it maliciously. Some people make age jokes because they're trying to be cruel or dismissive. You made one because you were nervous and trying to make conversation. There's a difference. I was nervous, I admitted. I'd noticed you around the building before but never had the courage to actually talk to you. And now you're trapped with me for an hour. Careful what you wish for. The maintenance crew finally got us moving 45 minutes later. As the elevator doors opened on the 8th floor, I felt an unexpected pang of disappointment. Our impromptu conversation was ending, and I wasn't ready for it to be over. Rebecca gathered her empty bakery box and straightened her blazer. The other passengers filed out quickly, eager to get to their delayed appointments. Harold muttered something about rescheduling his entire morning, while Jenny was already on her phone explaining her tardiness to someone. Well, Derek Sullivan, Rebecca said as we stepped into the hallway, this has been the most memorable birthday morning I've had in years. Right, your birthday, I said, suddenly feeling awkward again now that we were back in the real world. I hope the rest of your day is less confined. She laughed, and I realized I was already missing that sound. The day's still young, plenty of time for more adventures. We walked toward the main lobby together, our footsteps echoing on the polished marble floor. I kept stealing glances at her, trying to figure out how to extend this moment without seeming desperate or weird. I work late most nights, I found myself saying as we approached the building's exit. Usually grab dinner at Romano's Deli across the street around 7. They make a decent pastrami sandwich. Are you asking me out, Derek? The directness of her question caught me off guard. Maybe. I mean, if you wanted to grab dinner sometime. Not necessarily tonight, just sometime. Rebecca stopped walking and turned to face me fully. Her green eyes had that same amused sparkle from the elevator. You know what? I was planning to have a quiet birthday dinner at home with leftover Chinese takeout and a Netflix marathon, but pastrami at Romano's sounds infinitely more interesting. Really? Really? 7 o'clock? 7 o'clock, I confirmed, probably grinning like an idiot. It's a date then. Try not to make any more jokes about my advanced age, she said with a wink before heading toward the stairwell. I'll take the stairs from now on. Elevators seem dangerous around you. I watched her disappear up the staircase, then spent the rest of the day completely unable to concentrate on insurance claims. Every time I tried to focus on a file, my mind wandered back to Rebecca's laugh, her easy confidence, the way she'd turned my mortifying elevator comment into something that somehow brought us together instead of driving us apart. At 6:45, I was already at Romano's, having changed my shirt twice and arrived 15 minutes early because I was too nervous to stay at my apartment. The deli was one of those old-school New York-style places that had somehow survived in downtown Seattle, complete with checkered tablecloths and the smell of fresh bread that hit you the moment you walked in. I'd managed to snag a corner booth and was nursing a coffee when Rebecca walked in. She'd changed out of her business attire into dark jeans and a soft blue sweater that made her eyes even more striking. Her hair was down now, falling in waves past her shoulders, and she looked younger somehow, more relaxed. You're early, she said, sliding into the booth across from me. Occupational hazard. When you spend your days investigating insurance fraud, punctuality becomes a survival skill. And here I thought you were just eager to see me again. She teased, signaling the waitress. The truth was, I had been eager to see her again. More eager than I'd been about anything in months, but admitting that felt too vulnerable for a first date, especially with someone who seemed so effortlessly confident. We ordered pastrami for me, turkey club for her, and coffee that was infinitely better than my usual gas station swill. The conversation picked up right where we'd left off in the elevator, as if no time had passed at all. So, tell me about these mystery novels, Rebecca said, after we'd settled in. What got you started on crime fiction? My grandmother, actually. She had this massive collection of Agatha Christie and Raymond Chandler books. I used to spend summers at her house in Portland, and she'd let me stay up late reading if I promised to discuss the plots with her the next morning. She was better at solving the mysteries than most of the detectives. That's sweet. Did she ever figure out who the killer was before the reveal? Always. She had this theory that the murderer was usually the person the author made you like the most. "Trust no one, Derek," she'd say, "especially the charming ones." Rebecca raised an eyebrow. "Should I be worried? You seem pretty charming yourself." "Only when I'm not insulting people's ages in elevators." Our food arrived, and Rebecca immediately stole a pickle from my plate without asking. It was such a casual, comfortable gesture that it caught me off guard. Most first dates were full of polite boundaries and careful etiquette. This felt different, more natural. "Your turn," I said. "How did someone end up being a marketing director who bakes championship-level pound cakes?" Long story. I actually started in graphic design right out of college. Small firm in Portland that specialized in restaurant branding. I was decent at it, but I discovered I was better at understanding what clients actually wanted versus what they said they wanted. She took a bite of her sandwich and continued. Eventually got recruited by a larger agency in San Francisco. Worked my way up the ladder, learned the business side, moved to Seattle when Emma was in high school, because I wanted her to have a more stable environment. What about Emma's father? I immediately regretted asking. It was too personal, too soon, and none of my business. But Rebecca didn't seem bothered by the question. "Richard," she said simply. "We divorced when Emma was 12. He's a good father, just not a good husband. He lives in Sacramento now, works in tech. We're friendly enough. We both show up for Emma's important events and holidays without any drama." That sounds mature. It took a while to get there. The first year after the divorce was rough. I was angry, he was defensive, and Emma was caught in the middle. But eventually we realized that our daughter needed parents who could be in the same room without World War III breaking out. I found myself admiring her honesty. Most people on first dates tried to present the sanitized version of their lives, the highlight reel without any of the messy reality. "What about you?" she asked. "Ever been married?" "Came close once. Sarah. We were together for 3 years, lived together for 2. She wanted me to be more ambitious, make more money, have bigger career goals. When I told her I was actually happy doing what I do, that I didn't need to be a millionaire to feel successful, she said I lacked drive. Ouch. Yeah. The breakup was brutal. She made me feel like I was settling for mediocrity, like being content with my life was some kind of character flaw. Rebecca leaned forward slightly. "Can I tell you something? There's nothing wrong with being content. The world is full of people chasing some imaginary finish line, thinking they'll be happy when they get the promotion, the house, the car, whatever. Most of them never actually get there because they keep moving the goalposts." "You sound like you speak from experience." I spent my 30s trying to climb the corporate ladder as fast as possible. 60-hour weeks, networking events every weekend, saying yes to every opportunity that came my way. I thought success meant being busy and stressed all the time. She paused to sip her coffee. Then Emma got sick when she was 14. Nothing serious, just mono that knocked her out for 2 months. But I realized I'd been so focused on advancing my career that I was barely present for her actual childhood. That's when I decided contentment wasn't a dirty word. What changed? I stopped taking every promotion that was offered, started saying no to projects that would require too much travel, began actually using my vacation days, started baking again, which I'd loved in college, but abandoned because it wasn't productive enough. The waitress refilled our coffee cups, and Rebecca smiled at her warmly, asking about her evening and commenting on her earrings. It was genuine interest, not performative politeness, and I found myself watching the interaction with fascination. "You're good with people," I observed after the waitress moved on. "Occupational requirement, but I actually enjoy it. People are interesting when you take the time to really listen to them." "Is that your secret?" "Listening? Partly. But mostly it's about not judging. Everyone has a story, usually more complicated than what you see on the surface. The client who seems demanding might be dealing with a failing business. The teenager who's rude to the cashier might be having the worst day of their life. Even guys who make stupid jokes about age and elevators? Especially them," she said with a grin. "Though in your case, I could tell you were mortified before the words were even fully out of your mouth. That told me everything I needed to know about your character." We talked for another hour. the conversation flowing from books to travel to childhood memories to dreams for the future. Rebecca had been to 17 countries, spoke conversational Spanish and French, and wanted to learn Italian before her 50th birthday. She'd once gotten food poisoning in Bangkok and spent 3 days in a hospital where no one spoke English, but still considered it one of her best travel experiences because of the kindness of the nursing staff. I told her about my dream of writing a mystery novel someday, about the half-finished manuscript sitting on my laptop that I'd been working on for 2 years, about my fear that it wasn't good enough, that I didn't have anything interesting to say. "What's it about?" she asked. "An insurance investigator who stumbles onto a murder that's been staged to look like an accident. Write what you know, right?" "That sounds fascinating. Have you let anyone read it?" "No one. It's probably terrible. Or it's probably brilliant and you're just scared to find out. Fear of success can be just as paralyzing as fear of failure." By 9 o'clock, Romano's was nearly empty and the waitress was clearly hoping we'd wrap up soon. Rebecca insisted on splitting the check despite my protests, and we found ourselves standing on the sidewalk outside, neither quite ready to end the evening. "This was really nice," she said. "Much better than leftover lo mein and Netflix. Would you like to do it again sometime?" "I'd like that very much. But next time, I get to pick the place." "Deal." "Any hints about where you might choose?" Rebecca's smile was mysterious. "Let's just say it won't involve elevators or age jokes." As she walked toward her car, she called back over her shoulder. "Oh, and Derek? Happy birthday to me." I stood there, grinning on the empty sidewalk, watching her taillights disappear into the Seattle traffic, already counting the hours until I could see her again. 3 days later, Rebecca texted me an address downtown with a simple message. Saturday, 2 p.m., wear comfortable shoes. I spent Friday evening Googling the address, but it just led to a generic office building. No restaurants, no coffee shops, nothing that gave me a clue about what she had planned. By Saturday morning, I was equal parts excited and nervous. The address turned out to be the Seattle Art Museum. I found Rebecca waiting by the main entrance, wearing dark jeans, ankle boots, and a leather jacket that made her look effortlessly cool. She was studying a map of the current exhibitions, her hair catching the afternoon sunlight. "An art museum?" I said, approaching her with a smile. "Too predictable?" "Not at all. I just wasn't expecting it." "Good. I like keeping people on their toes." She folded the map and slipped it into her jacket pocket. "There's a new exhibition on contemporary crime scene photography. Thought it might appeal to your investigative side." The exhibition was darker than I'd expected, both literally and thematically. Black walls, dramatic lighting, and photographs that turned real crime scenes into haunting works of art. It should have been disturbing, but the photographer had somehow captured something beautiful in the aftermath of violence. "These are incredible," I said, stopping in front of a photograph of an abandoned warehouse where a murder had taken place. The photographer had focused on how the morning light streamed through broken windows, creating patterns on the concrete floor. "The artist spent 2 years getting permission from police departments across the country," Rebecca read from the placard. She wanted to show how beauty can exist even in the darkest places. We moved through the exhibition slowly, discussing each piece. Rebecca had a way of seeing details I missed. The symbolism in the photographer's choice of angles, the way shadows were used to create mood, the subtle commentary on violence in American society. "You know a lot about photography," I observed. "I minored in art history in college. Never got to use it much in marketing, but it comes in handy at museums." After the crime scene exhibition, we wandered through the rest of the museum. Rebecca gravitated toward the modern art section, while I found myself drawn to a collection of Depression-era photographs. We met up in front of a massive abstract painting that looked like someone had thrown paint at a canvas during an earthquake. "What do you think it means?" I asked, genuinely curious about her interpretation. "I think it means the artist got paid a lot of money to make a mess," Rebecca said dryly. I burst out laughing, causing several other museum-goers to turn and stare. "You're supposed to find deeper meaning in it. Sometimes a mess is just a mess. Not everything has to have profound significance." She tilted her head, studying the painting from a different angle. "Although, if I had to assign meaning to it, I'd say it represents the chaos of modern dating. The chaos of modern dating? Think about it. All these random colors thrown together with no apparent pattern. Some parts work, some parts clash horribly, and you're never quite sure if what you're looking at is art or just an accident. That's actually pretty accurate. We left the museum around 4 and walked down to Pike Place Market. Saturday afternoon was peak tourist time, and the market was packed with people taking photos of the fish-throwing vendors and sampling everything from artisanal honey to Ethiopian coffee. Rebecca led us through the crowds with the confidence of someone who'd navigated these streets many times before. She stopped at a flower stall and bought a small bouquet of sunflowers, not for any special reason, just because she liked how cheerful they looked. "You buy flowers for yourself?" I asked. "Why not? I like flowers, I have money, and I don't need a man to justify fresh flowers in my house." She handed the bouquet to the vendor and pulled out her wallet. "Besides, waiting for someone else to buy you flowers is a good way to end up with a house full of plastic plants." We found a bench overlooking Elliott Bay and sat watching the ferries come and go. Rebecca arranged her sunflowers carefully in her lap, and I found myself watching her hands. Elegant fingers with short, practical nails, and a simple silver ring on her right hand. "Can I ask you something?" I said. "Shoot. Why did you say yes? To dinner the other night? I mean, we'd just met, I'd insulted you, and you knew practically nothing about me." Rebecca considered this, watching a seagull dive for scraps near the water. "Honestly, because you seemed genuine, not trying to impress me or play games or pretend to be someone you weren't. Do you know how rare that is in dating?" "I wasn't really trying to date you in the elevator. I was just trying to survive the embarrassment." "Exactly. You were just being yourself, awkward elevator jokes and all. Most guys I meet are performing some version of who they think I want them to be." Ferry horn echoed across the water, and we watched the boat slowly make its way toward Bainbridge Island. The late afternoon sun was starting to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. "What about you?" she asked. "Why did you ask me out? And don't say it was just because of the cake, even though it was an exceptional cake." I thought about how to answer honestly without sounding like a complete sap. "Because you laughed. Not just at my joke, but at the whole situation. You could have made me feel terrible about what I said, but instead you made it into something we could laugh about together. That told me you were someone worth getting to know. Plus, I'm incredibly charming and devastatingly attractive." "That too," I said, grinning. We walked back through the market as the vendors were starting to close up for the day. Rebecca stopped at a bookstore tucked between a cheese shop and a vintage clothing store. The shelves were packed floor to ceiling with used books, and the narrow aisles smelled like old paper and coffee. "Mystery section," she announced, leading me toward the back of the store. We spent 20 minutes browsing, recommending books to each other, and debating the merits of various authors. Rebecca found a first-edition Louise Penny novel I'd been wanting to read, while I discovered a Nordic noir author she hadn't tried yet. "We should start a book club," she said, as we headed to the register. "A book club of 2 people? The best kind. No scheduling conflicts, no one picks terrible books you have to pretend to like, and we can meet somewhere with good food." The elderly man behind the register looked up from his newspaper as we approached. "Find everything you were looking for?" "And more," Rebecca replied, placing both books on the counter. "I can pay for mine," I started to say, but she waved me off. "My idea. My treat. Besides, you bought dinner." Outside the bookstore, we realized we'd been wandering around for nearly 4 hours. The market was much quieter now, with only a few vendors still open and the crowds mostly gone. "I should probably head home," Rebecca said, but she didn't make any move to leave. "Yeah, me too," I agreed, also not moving. We stood there on the sidewalk, both of us clearly not ready for the day to end, but not sure how to extend it without seeming too eager. "There's a great Thai place near my apartment," I finally said. "If you're hungry, I could eat." The restaurant was a hole-in-the-wall place called Bangkok Garden, wedged between a laundromat and a cell phone repair shop. The interior was nothing special: plastic chairs, fluorescent lighting, and faded photos of Thailand on the walls. But the food was incredible. Rebecca ordered pad see ew with extra vegetables, while I went with my usual green curry. We shared spring rolls and talked about travel, comparing stories of the worst meals we'd ever eaten in foreign countries. Food poisoning in Morocco, Rebecca said without hesitation. Street vendor tagine in Marrakech. I was sick for 3 days and couldn't eat anything spicier than plain rice for a week. Gas station sushi in rural Nebraska, I countered. I was driving cross-country after college and made the terrible decision to buy raw fish from a place that probably hadn't seen a health inspector since the Clinton administration. Why would you even consider gas station sushi? I was 22 and thought I was invincible. Also, I was really craving sushi and hadn't seen civilization for about 200 miles. The conversation drifted to travel dreams and bucket list destinations. Rebecca wanted to see the northern lights in Iceland and take a cooking class in Tuscany. I admitted I'd always wanted to visit New Zealand, partly because of the Lord of the Rings movies, but mostly because it seemed like the kind of place where you could disappear for a while and figure out what really mattered. What would you figure out? She asked. Whether I'm actually happy with my life or just comfortable with it. Sometimes I can't tell the difference. There's nothing wrong with being comfortable. Comfortable is underrated. But what if comfortable is just another word for settling? Rebecca set down her chopsticks and looked at me seriously. Derek, you're 35 years old. You have a job that pays your bills and doesn't make you miserable. You live in a beautiful city, you have friends, you read books, you write in your spare time. You're not hurting anyone, you're not wasting your life, and you're not settling for something that makes you unhappy. That's not settling. That's being an adult. When you put it that way, it sounds almost reasonable. It is reasonable. The idea that everyone has to be constantly striving for more, bigger, better, is exhausting. Some of the happiest people I know are the ones who figured out what they actually want instead of what they think they're supposed to want. By the time we finished dinner, it was nearly 9 o'clock. Rebecca insisted on splitting the check again, despite my protests that she'd already paid for the books and museum tickets. Next time you can pay, she said, pulling out her credit card. Next time? Well, I assumed there would be a next time, unless you're getting tired of my company. Not even close. We walked back to where we'd parked, our cars coincidentally on the same street about half a block apart. The evening air was cool but not cold, and the downtown streets were relatively quiet for a Saturday night. I had a really good time today, I said as we reached her car. Even the abstract art that looked like a dating disaster? Especially that. You made it make sense. Rebecca unlocked her car but didn't get in right away. You know, Derek, I have to admit something. I haven't done this in a while. Been to an art museum? Dating. It's been almost 2 years since my last relationship ended, and I was starting to think I'd forgotten how to connect with someone new. How are you doing so far? She smiled, and I felt that same flutter in my chest that I'd experienced in the elevator and at Romano's. Better than I expected. Much better. As she drove away, I found myself already planning what I wanted to show her next, what conversations I wanted to have, what parts of my life I wanted to share with her. For the first time in years, the future felt full of possibilities instead of just more of the same. 2 weeks into what I was starting to think of as the Rebecca era of my life, she called me at work with an unusual request. Are you free tonight? She asked without preamble. I need a favor, and it might be weird. Weird how? I'm supposed to go to my company's annual client appreciation event. It's one of those networking things with cocktails and small talk, and my usual +1 bailed on me last minute. I leaned back in my desk chair, intrigued. And you want me to be your fake boyfriend for the evening? Not a fake boyfriend, just moral support. Someone to talk to when the conversations get boring, which they will. The event starts at 7, and I promise I'll make it worth your while. What does worth your while mean? Let's just say I know where they keep the good appetizers, and I have insider information about which clients to avoid. An hour later, I was standing in my bedroom staring at my closet and realizing I had absolutely nothing appropriate for a corporate networking event. My work clothes were fine for insurance offices, but Rebecca's company handled high-end marketing campaigns. I suspected their idea of business casual was significantly more sophisticated than mine. I ended up at Nordstrom, where a sales associate named Marcus took one look at me and immediately understood the assignment. First time meeting the girlfriend's colleagues? He asked, pulling a navy blazer off the rack. Something like that. Say no more. We'll have you looking like you belong at whatever fancy event she's dragging you to. 20 minutes and $300 later, I was the proud owner of a blazer that actually fit, dress pants that didn't make me look like I was wearing my father's clothes, and a shirt that Marcus assured me was sophisticated but approachable. I met Rebecca outside the Grand Hyatt downtown at exactly 7 o'clock. She was waiting by the valet stand, and when she saw me approaching, her expression shifted to something I couldn't quite read. "Wow," she said, looking me up and down. "You clean up nice, Derek Sullivan. Marcus at Nordstrom gets the credit. I was hoping not to embarrass you in front of your colleagues. Trust me, that won't be a problem." She was wearing a black dress that managed to be both professional and stunning, paired with heels that added 3 inches to her height. Her hair was swept up in an elegant twist, and she wore just enough makeup to highlight her eyes. Ready to meet the wolves? The hotel ballroom was exactly what I'd expected. Crystal chandeliers, perfectly arranged cocktail tables, and the kind of ambient lighting that made everyone look slightly more attractive than they actually were. The crowd was a mix of marketing professionals and their clients, all dressed in variations of expensive business attire and clutching drinks while engaging in the particular type of animated conversation that happens when networking is disguised as socializing. "Rebecca!" A woman in a silver dress approached us almost immediately, air-kissing Rebecca's cheek with the precision of someone who'd perfected the gesture. "You look fantastic. And who is this handsome mystery man?" "Janet. This is Derek. Derek Janet is our creative director and the person responsible for most of our award-winning campaigns." Janet extended a perfectly manicured hand. "Derek, what a pleasure. What do you do?" "Insurance investigation," I replied, shaking her hand. "How fascinating. I bet you have some incredible stories." Before I could respond, Janet had already spotted someone more important across the room and excused herself with the fluid grace of a professional networker. "That was actually one of the easier conversations you'll have tonight," Rebecca said, leading me toward the bar. "Janet's harmless. It's the clients you have to watch out for." We ordered drinks, whiskey neat for me, gin and tonic for her, and Rebecca began pointing out the various players in the room. The tech startup founder who insisted on pitching his app to everyone he met. The restaurant chain owner who was notorious for changing his mind about campaigns halfway through production. The boutique hotel group that paid their bills late but threw the best holiday parties. "And that," she said, nodding toward a man in an expensive suit who was gesturing dramatically while talking to a small group, "is Marcus Hartwell. He owns 3 car dealerships and thinks he's Don Draper. Let me guess, he hits on all the female employees? Bingo. He also thinks every marketing campaign should feature scantily clad women draped over cars, regardless of what we're actually selling." As if summoned by our conversation, Marcus spotted Rebecca and began making his way over, leaving his previous audience mid-sentence. "Rebecca, darling," he said in a voice that was probably meant to be charming, but came across as oily. "You look absolutely radiant tonight. Marcus, I'd like you to meet Derek." Marcus barely glanced at me before turning his attention back to Rebecca. "I was hoping we could discuss that campaign proposal over dinner sometime soon. I have some ideas that might interest you." "I'm sure you do," Rebecca replied smoothly, "but I'll have to check my calendar. Derek and I have been pretty busy lately." It was subtle, but the message was clear. Marcus's smile faltered slightly as he finally acknowledged my existence with a curt nod. "Derek, was it? What business are you in?" "I investigate insurance fraud," I said, making my voice as serious as possible. "Corporate fraud, staged accidents, false claims. You'd be surprised how often seemingly legitimate businesses are involved in fraudulent activities." Marcus's expression shifted noticeably. "How interesting." "It really is. Just last week I uncovered a scheme involving a local business owner who was filing false damage claims. The penalties for insurance fraud can be quite severe." Rebecca hid her smile behind her drink as Marcus excused himself, suddenly remembering an urgent conversation he needed to have across the room. "Insurance fraud?" Rebecca asked once he was out of earshot. It seemed like the most intimidating version of my job description. "Remind me never to get on your bad side." We spent the next hour circulating through the room, and I found myself genuinely enjoying the experience. Rebecca had a gift for making introductions that highlighted the most interesting aspects of people's work, and she seemed to know exactly how long to spend with each group before gracefully moving on. I met a food truck owner who'd built an empire from a single taco cart, a nonprofit director who was revolutionizing literacy programs in underserved communities, and an architect who specialized in sustainable building design. When the conversations were interesting, Rebecca let them flow naturally. When they started to lag, she expertly redirected us elsewhere. "You're really good at this," I observed as we took a break at one of the cocktail tables. "Years of practice. The key is to be genuinely interested in what people do. Most networking events fail because everyone's just trying to sell something, instead of actually listening." "Is that your marketing philosophy?" "It's my life philosophy. People are interesting when you take the time to find out what makes them tick." A server appeared with a tray of what looked like miniature works of art, some kind of seafood appetizer with microgreens and sauce artfully drizzled around the plate. "These are the good appetizers I mentioned," Rebecca said, taking two from the tray. "The kitchen here is incredible." She was right. Whatever I was eating was probably the most sophisticated food I'd ever tasted, and that included the fancy restaurant Sarah had dragged me to for our anniversary the year before we broke up. "I feel like I'm way out of my league here," I admitted. "Why?" "Look around. Everyone here is successful, ambitious, building businesses or creating things. I investigate insurance fraud for a living." Rebecca set down her drink and looked at me seriously. "Derek, that architect I introduced you to? She told me later that you asked the most thoughtful questions about sustainable design that she'd heard all evening. The nonprofit director wants your email because she thinks you'd be perfect for their board of directors. You're not out of your league. You're just not used to being around people who value substance over flash." Before I could respond, the lights dimmed slightly, and a woman in an elegant red dress stepped up to a small podium that had been set up near the windows. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for joining us tonight for Pinnacle Communications' annual client appreciation event." The woman, whom Rebecca whispered was her company's CEO, gave a brief speech about the year's successes, upcoming projects, and gratitude for client partnerships. It was the kind of corporate speech that managed to be both polished and genuine, hitting all the right notes without feeling scripted. "And now," the CEO continued, "I'd like to recognize some of our outstanding team members who've gone above and beyond this year." Several names were called, each person stepping forward to accept a small crystal award and pose for photos. I watched Rebecca's face during the presentations, noting how genuinely happy she seemed for her colleagues' recognition. "Rebecca Chen," the CEO announced, and I felt Rebecca stiffen beside me, for her exceptional work on the Harborview Hotel campaign, which not only exceeded all performance metrics, but also won the Pacific Northwest Marketing Excellence Award. Rebecca looked genuinely surprised as she made her way to the front of the room. The CEO handed her an award and said something that made Rebecca laugh before the photographer captured the moment. When she returned to our table, she seemed almost embarrassed by the attention. "You didn't mention winning an award," I said. "It wasn't a big deal." "Rebecca, they just called out your work in front of the entire room. That's definitely a big deal." I had a good team. The creative director, the account managers, the whole production crew. It was a group effort. I was starting to understand something about Rebecca that I found incredibly attractive. She was confident and successful, but she didn't need to prove it to anyone. She let her work speak for itself without feeling the need to constantly promote her accomplishments. The formal part of the evening wrapped up around 9:30, and people began filtering out in small groups. Rebecca and I lingered, finishing our drinks and watching the city lights through the floor-to-ceiling windows. "Thank you for coming tonight," she said. "I know corporate events aren't exactly thrilling entertainment." "Are you kidding? I got to intimidate a sleazy car dealer, eat incredible food, and watch you get recognized for being brilliant at your job. This was way better than my usual Thursday night of leftover pizza and Netflix." "What do you usually watch on Netflix?" "Documentaries about serial killers, mostly." "Occupational hazard," Rebecca laughed. "Of course you do. I should have guessed." We took the elevator down to the lobby, a different, more reliable elevator than the one where we'd met, and walked outside into the cool night air. The valet brought Rebecca's car around, but she didn't get in immediately. "I know this might sound forward," she said, "but would you like to come back to my place? I have a bottle of wine that's been waiting for a special occasion, and I think tonight qualifies." I looked at her standing there in the soft glow of the hotel's entrance lights, her award tucked under one arm, her car keys in her other hand, and realized that somewhere over the past few weeks, this had stopped being casual dating and had become something much more significant. "I'd like that very much," I said. "Follow me home then. And Derek, drive carefully. I'd hate for you to get in an accident and have to investigate your own insurance claim." Rebecca's house was nothing like what I'd expected. Nestled in the Queen Anne neighborhood, it was a 1920s craftsman bungalow with a wraparound porch and gardens that looked professionally maintained even in the dim porch light. The interior was warm and lived in, with hardwood floors, built-in bookshelves, and the kind of comfortable furniture that invited you to stay a while. "This is beautiful," I said, following her into the living room where a stone fireplace dominated one wall. "Thanks. I bought it right after the divorce. Emma was starting high school, and I wanted her to have stability, a place that felt like home instead of just somewhere we were temporarily staying." The walls were covered with a mix of photography and paintings, some clearly professional pieces, and others that looked like they might be Emma's artwork from various stages of her childhood. Family photos were scattered throughout. Rebecca and a teenage girl I assumed was Emma hiking in the mountains, at graduation ceremonies, on what looked like a European vacation. "Emma's in college now?" I asked, studying a photo of Rebecca and her daughter at what appeared to be a college campus. "UC Berkeley, environmental science major. She wants to save the world, one endangered species at a time." Rebecca kicked off her heels and immediately seemed more relaxed. "She's coming home for Thanksgiving in a few weeks." The wine Rebecca had mentioned turned out to be a bottle of 2015 Barolo that looked expensive enough to require a special occasion. She opened it with the practiced ease of someone who appreciated good wine, pouring 2 glasses and settling onto the couch beside me. "To survive corporate networking events," she said, raising her glass. "To watch you win awards and make it look effortless." We touched glasses, and I took a sip of wine that was probably worth more than my monthly grocery budget. It was smooth and complex, with flavors I couldn't even begin to identify. "This is incredible. How does someone learn about wine like this?" My ex-husband's one redeeming quality was his wine collection. During the divorce proceedings, he fought harder for his bottles than he did for custody. She curled her legs under her, getting comfortable. I ended up with half of them and spent the next year teaching myself about what I'd inherited. Any regrets about the divorce? None. Richard wasn't a bad person, just not the right person for me. We wanted different things and had different priorities. He was all about climbing the corporate ladder, working 18-hour days, measuring success by salary increases and job titles. She paused to sip her wine, staring into the fireplace that wasn't currently lit. "I spent years trying to be the wife he wanted. The one who entertained his clients, went to company events, never complained about his travel schedule or missed dinners. But I was miserable. And so was he, probably. What changed? Emma. When she was about 10, she asked me why Daddy was never home and why I always seemed sad when he was. That's when I realized we were modeling a terrible relationship for her. I didn't want her to think that marriage meant settling for someone who made you feel lonely even when they were in the same room. I thought about my own parents, who'd been married for 38 years and still held hands while watching television. They'd always made marriage look easy, natural, like they genuinely enjoyed each other's company. It had never occurred to me that some people stayed in relationships that made them fundamentally unhappy. "What about your parents?" Rebecca asked, as if reading my thoughts. "Are they still together?" "Married 38 years. Dad's a retired electrician. Mom taught elementary school until she retired last year. They live in Spokane now, in the same house where I grew up. That sounds nice, stable." It was. Sometimes I think it gives me unrealistic expectations about relationships. I always assumed that when you found the right person, everything would just work naturally. "And then you dated Sarah." "And then I dated Sarah," I confirmed. "Who made me feel like I was constantly failing some test I didn't know I was taking." Rebecca shifted on the couch, turning to face me more directly. "Can I tell you something? Earlier tonight, when Marcus was being his usual obnoxious self, you didn't try to prove anything or compete with him. You just made him uncomfortable enough to leave me alone. That was perfect. I've never been good at the alpha male thing." "Good. Alpha males are exhausting. I've dated enough of them to know." "How many is enough?" "Too many." There was the investment banker who referred to our relationship as a merger of compatible assets. The surgeon who scheduled our dates between operations and expected me to be grateful for his time. The real estate developer who kept suggesting ways I could optimize my house for better resale value. I laughed despite myself. They sound awful. They weren't awful people, just wrong for me. They were all successful, ambitious, attractive, everything I thought I was supposed to want. But they made me feel like I was auditioning for the role of girlfriend instead of just being myself. And what changed your mind about what you wanted? Honestly, getting older. Turning 40 was like flipping a switch. I stopped caring about what I was supposed to want and started paying attention to what actually made me happy. She reached for the wine bottle and refilled both our glasses. The movement brought her closer to me on the couch, and I caught a hint of her perfume. Something subtle and sophisticated that suited her perfectly. What makes you happy? I asked. Sunday mornings with coffee and the New York Times crossword. Hiking trails where you can't hear traffic. Good food shared with people I care about. Books that make me forget to check my phone. Conversations that last longer than expected. Like tonight? Especially like tonight. We talked until almost midnight. The conversation flowing from childhood memories to travel dreams, to philosophical questions about success and happiness. Rebecca told me about her college years in Portland, studying art history and French literature, while working part-time at a bookstore. About the summer she spent in Paris, living in a tiny apartment and surviving on bread, cheese, and cheap wine while visiting every museum in the city. I shared stories about my grandmother in Portland, the one who'd introduced me to mystery novels. About the novel I'd been working on for 2 years, still stuck in the middle because I couldn't figure out how to resolve the plot without making it obvious who the killer was. What's the basic premise? Rebecca asked. An insurance investigator. Shocking, I know. Gets assigned to what looks like a straightforward accidental death. But the more he digs into it, the more evidence he finds that it was actually murder, staged to look like an accident. Who's the killer? That's the problem. I have 3 different suspects, all with good motives and opportunities. I can't decide. Which one makes the most sense? Maybe that's your answer. What if all 3 were involved? A conspiracy? I stared at her. That's actually brilliant. I've been trying to narrow it down to one person when the real story might be about how they work together. Sometimes the best solutions are the ones that seem more complicated but actually explain everything better. It was nearly 1 in the morning when I finally said I should probably head home. Rebecca walked me to the front door, both of us moving. Slowly, reluctant to end the evening. Thank you for tonight, she said, leaning against the door frame. For coming with me, for handling Marcus, for helping me figure out your murder plot. Thank you for trusting me with your colleagues and your expensive wine. The wine was worth sharing. We stood there for a moment, the porch light casting shadows across her face. There was something in the air between us, a tension that had been building all evening. I found myself leaning closer, and she didn't move away. Our first kiss was soft, tentative, a question more than a statement. When she didn't pull back, I kissed her again. Deeper this time, my hand finding the back of her neck where a few strands of hair had escaped from her elegant twist. When we finally broke apart, she rested her forehead against mine. I've been wondering when you were going to do that, she said softly. I've been wanting to do that since the art museum. What took you so long? I was trying to be a gentleman. Well, stop it. I'm 49, not 17. I know what I want. I kissed her again, longer this time, feeling like everything that had happened over the past few weeks had been leading to this moment. When we separated, she was smiling. Drive safely, she said. Text me when you get home. Is that your way of saying you want to see me again? Derek, after tonight, you're going to have a hard time getting rid of me. I walked to my car feeling like I was floating. As I drove home through the empty Seattle streets, I kept replaying the evening. Rebecca's laugh when Marcus had retreated, the pride in her voice when she talked about Emma, the way she'd looked at me when she said she knew what she wanted. For the first time in years, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. The following Saturday morning, I woke up to the sound of my phone buzzing with a text from Rebecca. Coffee emergency. Can you meet me at Victrola on Capitol Hill in 30 minutes? Bring your sense of humor. I'd learned enough about Rebecca by now to know that a coffee emergency could mean anything from a genuine crisis to her discovering a new pastry she wanted to share. Either way, I was out the door in 15 minutes. Victrola turned out to be one of those trendy coffee shops with exposed brick walls, mismatched vintage furniture, and baristas who looked like they could star in indie films. I found Rebecca in a corner booth, staring at her laptop screen with the kind of intense concentration usually reserved for defusing bombs. "What's the emergency?" I asked, sliding into the seat across from her. "My daughter is bringing someone home for Thanksgiving," she said without looking up from the screen. "Someone she's been dating for 6 months and never mentioned." "Okay, that's good, right? She's happy?" "She's 20 years old, Derek. When I was 20, I thought I was in love with a guy who collected vintage lunchboxes and wore the same Black Sabbath t-shirt for 3 weeks straight." I signaled the barista and ordered a coffee, then turned my attention back to Rebecca, who was now scrolling through what appeared to be Emma's social media profiles. "What are you looking for?" "Evidence that this boyfriend isn't a complete disaster. So far, I've found photos of them at a protest for climate action, volunteering at an animal shelter, and hiking Mount Tamalpais. He seems responsible." "You say that like it's a bad thing?" "It's not. It's just that responsible 20-year-old boys don't exist. There has to be something wrong with him." The barista brought my coffee, some kind of single-origin Ethiopian blend that probably cost more than my usual gas station coffee budget for a week, and I watched Rebecca continue her investigation. "Have you considered just asking Emma about him?" I tried. She gave me the standard college daughter response. "He's really nice, Mom. You'll like him." That tells me absolutely nothing useful. Maybe that's all you need to know. "Emma's smart, right? Do you trust her judgment?" Rebecca finally looked up from her laptop. "I do trust her judgment. That's what's making me crazy. If she thinks he's worth bringing home to meet me, then this might be serious. And serious is scary. Terrifying. My baby is growing up and making adult decisions, and I'm sitting in a coffee shop stalking her boyfriend on Instagram like some kind of helicopter parent." I reached across the table and closed her laptop. "Stop. You're spiraling." "I don't spiral." "Rebecca, you've been researching a 20-year-old college student like he's applying for a security clearance. That's definitely spiraling." She leaned back in her chair and laughed, the tension finally leaving her shoulders. "You're right. This is ridiculous. I'm acting like one of those parents I used to make fun of." "What changed your mind about letting me close the laptop?" You used my full name in that voice that suggests I'm being irrational. It reminded me of something Emma used to do when she was little. She'd put her hands on my face and say, "Mommy," breathe whenever I was stressed about work or the divorce. Smart kid. Too smart. She called me out on my overprotective tendencies when she was 16. Told me that hovering wasn't the same as caring, and that I needed to trust her to make her own mistakes. The coffee shop was filling up with the usual Saturday morning crowd. Couples reading newspapers together. Students with textbooks spread across tables. Freelancers claiming corners with their laptops and looking very important. Rebecca watched them for a moment, then turned back to me. "Can I ask you something personal?" "Shoot. Do you want kids someday?" The question caught me off guard. We'd been dating for a month, and while things were going well, this felt like stepping into deeper waters. "I think so," I said honestly. "I always assumed I would. But then I got to 35 without it happening and started wondering if I'd missed my window." "There's no window for men. You could father children when you're 60 if you wanted. Too. That's not really the point. I want to be young enough to play catch with my kids, to take them hiking, to have energy for all the things that come with parenting." Rebecca nodded thoughtfully. "Richard wanted kids in theory, but not in practice. He loved the idea of being a father but hated the actual work of parenting. I did all the night feedings, the doctor's appointments, the school conferences. He showed up for the fun parts. Birthday parties, soccer games when his schedule allowed, family vacations that he spent checking email." That sounds lonely. It was. Single parenting while married is worse than actual single parenting because, at least, when you're really alone, you don't have the constant disappointment of an absent partner. A group of college students at the next table burst into laughter, and Rebecca glanced over at them with a wistful expression. "I miss that," she said. Being young and thinking everything is hilarious? Being young and not overthinking everything. When I was Emma's age, I fell in love easily. First date, second date. Suddenly I was planning our future together. Now I analyze every interaction like it's a business negotiation. Is that what you're doing with me? Analyzing? She met my eyes directly. I was, at first. But somewhere along the way, you stopped being someone I was evaluating and became someone I was falling for. The confession hung in the air between us, more intimate than anything we'd shared so far. I reached across the table and took her hand. For what it's worth, I stopped evaluating you around the time you bought flowers for yourself at Pike Place. Market. That's very specific. It was the moment I realized you were completely self-sufficient but still chose to spend time with me. Not because you needed anything from me, but because you wanted to. A barista with elaborate tattoos appeared at our table with a plate of what looked like the most perfect cinnamon roll I'd ever seen. From the gentleman at the counter, she said, setting it down between us. He said you two looked like you were having an important conversation and might need sugar. We looked toward the counter, where an elderly man in a cardigan raised his coffee cup in our direction with a knowing smile. That's either very sweet or very creepy, Rebecca said. But she was smiling as she said it. I'm going with sweets, and this cinnamon roll looks incredible. We split the pastry, and Rebecca's phone buzzed with a text. She glanced at it and immediately brightened. Emma, she said. She wants to video chat tonight to tell me more about Tyler. That's his name, apparently. Tyler. That's a perfectly normal name, I know. I was secretly hoping for something ridiculous like Moonbeam or Axel, so I'd have an excuse to disapprove. What else does the text say? That she's excited for me to meet him, that he's nervous about meeting me, and that I should, please try, to be normal, Mom. Good advice. Easy for you to say. You don't have to figure out how to interrogate a 20-year-old boy while appearing casual and welcoming. Maybe don't think of it as an interrogation. Think of it as getting to know someone who's important to your daughter. Rebecca finished her coffee and gathered her things. You know what? You're coming to Thanksgiving dinner. What? I'm serious. I need backup. Someone to help me stay normal when I meet Tyler. Plus, Emma's been asking about my mysterious new boyfriend. I'm mysterious? She knows I'm dating someone, but I haven't told her much about you yet. I wanted to make sure this was real before I introduced the concept of Mom has a boyfriend into her world. And now I'm pretty sure this is real. We left the coffee shop and walked through Capitol Hill, past vintage stores and record shops and restaurants that wouldn't open for hours. The morning was crisp but sunny, the kind of Seattle day that reminded you why people moved here despite the rain. I should probably warn you, Rebecca said as we walked. Emma can be intense. She's passionate about her causes, opinionated about everything, and she doesn't suffer fools gladly. Sounds like her mother. Worse. I taught her to think critically and speak her mind, and now I have to live with the consequences. What kinds of things is she passionate about? Climate change, animal rights, social justice, organic farming, the dangers of fast fashion. Last year, she convinced her entire dorm to go vegetarian for a month to reduce their carbon footprint. Impressive. She's also the kind of person who will ask you detailed questions about your recycling habits and judge you based on your answers. We stopped at a crosswalk, waiting for the light to change. Rebecca seemed genuinely nervous about the upcoming family introduction, and I found her anxiety endearing. Rebecca, I said, if Emma is anything like you, I'm sure she's wonderful. And if she's important to you, then she's important to me. Even if she interrogates you about your environmental impact, especially then. I respect people who care about things that matter. The light changed, and we crossed the street together. Rebecca slipped her hand into mine as we walked, a gesture that felt natural and right. One more thing, she said. Emma doesn't know about the age gap between us. The age gap? You're 14 years younger than I am, Derek. To a 20-year-old, that might seem significant. To a 20-year-old, anyone over 30 is ancient. I don't think she's going to be calculating the difference between 35 and 49. You're probably right. I'm overthinking again. You're being a mom. It's different. We reached my car, parked a few blocks from the coffee shop. Rebecca leaned against the driver's side door, making it clear she wasn't ready for me to leave yet. "What are you doing the rest of today?" she asked. "Laundry, grocery shopping, maybe working on my novel. Nothing that can't wait. Want to come back to my place? I could make lunch, and you could help me prepare for tonight's video call with Emma." "By prepare, you mean? Help me come up with normal-sounding questions to ask about Tyler. The kind of questions that show interest without revealing that I've already researched his social media presence. I can do that. But you have to promise not to ask him about his college GPA or his 5-year career plan. Deal. But I'm definitely asking about his intentions regarding my daughter, Rebecca. Kidding. Mostly." As we drove back to her house, I found myself looking forward to being part of her family dynamic, even in this small way. It felt like another step forward in whatever we were building together. Another sign that this relationship was becoming something that mattered to both of us. Thanksgiving morning arrived with the kind of drizzle that made Seattle famous, and I found myself standing in Rebecca's kitchen at 8 a.m., helping her prepare what she insisted was going to be a casual, low-pressure dinner for 5 people. The reality was a meticulously planned feast that would have impressed a professional catering company. "Hand me that sage," Rebecca said, elbows deep in turkey preparation. She'd been up since 6, and the kitchen already smelled like herbs and butter and the promise of an incredible meal. "The sage that you grew in your garden, dried yourself, and stored in alphabetically organized spice jars? That would be the one." I'd arrived early at Rebecca's request, partly to help with dinner preparation, but mostly because she was nervous about Emma and Tyler's arrival. They'd driven up from Berkeley the night before and were staying at a hotel downtown, which Rebecca had initially protested. "She's my daughter, why wouldn't she stay here?" Until Emma explained that Tyler felt more comfortable having his own space for his first meeting with her mother. "Smart kid," I'd told Rebecca. "He's managing expectations and giving everyone an escape route if things get awkward." "Are you saying things might get awkward?" "I'm saying he's being considerate, which is probably a good sign." Now, 3 hours before Emma and Tyler were scheduled to arrive, Rebecca was channeling her anxiety into cooking. The menu had grown from just turkey and sides to a spread that included homemade cranberry sauce, 3 different potato dishes, green bean casserole made from scratch, stuffing with wild mushrooms and chestnuts, and 2 pies that she'd baked the day before. "This is enough food for 20 people, I observed, watching her check the turkey for the 3rd time in 10 minutes. "I want to make a good impression. Rebecca, you're an incredible cook. Emma knows this. Tyler will figure it out the moment he walks in here." She paused in her turkey basting and looked at me. "What if he doesn't like me?" The vulnerability in her voice caught me off guard. This was the same woman who'd confidently navigated a room full of corporate executives 2 weeks ago, who'd built a successful career in a competitive industry, who'd raised a daughter as a single parent. But the prospect of meeting her daughter's boyfriend had reduced her to the universal anxiety of every parent who wants their child to be happy. "Tyler's gonna love you," I said, moving behind her and wrapping my arms around her waist. "You're smart, funny, successful, and you raised the woman he's apparently crazy about. What's not to like? I could be the overbearing mother who asks too many questions. You could be, but you won't be, because you're aware of it and you're going to. Remember that Emma's happiness is more important than your curiosity." She leaned back against me, and I could feel some of the tension leave her shoulders. "When did you become so wise about parenting?" "I have excellent teachers. My parents always made my girlfriends feel welcome, even the ones they probably didn't approve of." "Like who?" "Jessica Martinez, senior year of high school. She was planning to become a professional poker player and had already dropped out of school to pursue her career. My parents invited her to family dinners, asked about her tournaments, treated her like she was studying to become a doctor. Did it work? She broke up with me 3 months later for a guy with a motorcycle, but she always said my parents were the coolest adults she'd ever met. Years later, she went back to school and became a veterinarian. So the secret is not judging. The secret is trusting that you raised Emma to make good decisions and showing respect for those decisions, even when you don't understand them." At exactly 1 o'clock, we heard a car pull into the driveway. Rebecca immediately went to the window, and I watched her face transform as she caught sight of her daughter. "She looks good," Rebecca said, and I could hear the relief in her voice. "Happy." Emma Chen was a shorter, younger version of her mother. with the same expressive eyes and confident stride. She bounded up the front steps with the energy of someone who was genuinely excited to be home. Behind her, moving more cautiously, was a tall, lanky young man with curly hair and wire-rimmed glasses who was clearly trying to make a good first impression. Rebecca opened the door before they could knock, immediately pulling Emma into a hug that lasted several seconds longer than usual. "Hi, baby," she said, and I could see tears threatening at the corners of her eyes. "Hi, Mom. You look amazing." Emma stepped back and gestured to the young man beside her. "This is Tyler. Tyler. This is my mom, Rebecca." Tyler stepped forward, with the kind of nervous politeness that reminded me of myself meeting someone's parents for the first time. "Mrs. Chen, it's so nice to finally meet you. Emma talks about you constantly. Just Rebecca, please. And it's wonderful to meet you, too." I watched the interaction from the kitchen doorway, noting how Tyler made eye contact, offered a firm handshake, and seemed genuinely pleased to be there despite his obvious nerves. "And you must be Derek," Emma said, turning her attention to me. "The mysterious boyfriend Mom has been so secretive about." "Mysterious?" "I prefer enigmatic," I said, stepping forward to shake her hand. "Your mother has told me wonderful things about you." "All lies, I'm sure," Emma replied with a grin that was pure Rebecca. Tyler was carrying a bottle of wine and what looked like a small potted plant. "I brought wine for dinner," he said, offering the bottle to Rebecca. "And this is a cutting from my mother's rosemary plant. Emma mentioned you like to garden." Rebecca accepted both gifts with the kind of genuine pleasure that immediately put Tyler at ease. "How thoughtful. I'll find the perfect spot for this in the herb garden." We settled in the living room while Rebecca finished the final dinner preparations. Emma curled up on the couch with the natural ease of someone who was truly home, while Tyler perched on the edge of his chair, clearly working to make conversation. "Derek's an insurance investigator," Rebecca called from the kitchen. "He catches people who lie about accidents and file false claims." "That must be fascinating," Tyler said, leaning forward with genuine interest. "Like detective work?" "Similar skills, smaller crimes, though occasionally I stumble onto something more serious." Emma was studying me with the kind of direct gaze that suggested she was making assessments. "Mom says you're writing a mystery novel." "Trying to. I've been stuck on the same plot problem for months." "What's the problem?" I explained the basic premise and my recent breakthrough about making the murder a conspiracy rather than a single killer. Emma listened intently, asking thoughtful questions about motivation and evidence. "Have you considered environmental crime?" Tyler suggested. "Like companies covering up illegal dumping or endangered species violations? Those cases often involve multiple conspirators and can look like accidents." "That's actually brilliant," I said, genuinely impressed. "A company stages an accident to cover up environmental damage, but it requires cooperation from multiple departments." "Tyler's studying environmental law," Emma said proudly. "He wants to prosecute corporations that damage ecosystems." The conversation flowed naturally from there. Tyler talked about his internship with a nonprofit that investigated illegal logging practices. Emma described her research project on microplastics in marine ecosystems. I found myself genuinely engaged with both of them, impressed by their passion and knowledge. Rebecca appeared in the doorway, untying her apron. "Dinner's ready." The dining room table looked like something from a magazine spread. Rebecca had used her good china, lit candles, and arranged flowers from her garden as a centerpiece. Tyler's eyes widened as he took in the feast spread before us. "Mrs. Rebecca, this is incredible. You didn't have to go through all this trouble." "It wasn't any trouble," Rebecca lied smoothly. "I love cooking for people I care about." As we settled around the table, Rebecca asked Tyler to say grace. He offered a simple, thoughtful blessing that mentioned gratitude for family, both biological and chosen, and for the opportunity to share meals with people who matter. Dinner conversation was everything Rebecca had hoped for, and nothing she'd feared. Tyler was polite but not stiff, asking Rebecca about her work and showing genuine interest in her answers. He complimented the food without being excessive, helped serve dishes without being asked, and treated Emma with the kind of casual affection that spoke to a comfortable, established relationship. "So, Tyler, Rebecca said during a lull in conversation. What are your plans after graduation? I tensed slightly, recognizing this as the question she'd been building up to all day. But Tyler answered without hesitation. I've been accepted to law school at UC Davis. Their environmental law program is one of the best in the country. After that, I'd like to work for the Environmental Protection Agency, or maybe the Department of Justice's Environmental Crimes Section. That sounds like important work. I think so. Climate change is the defining issue of our generation, and corporate accountability is a huge part of addressing it. Emma reached over and squeezed Tyler's hand, clearly proud of his goals. The bush gesture was so natural, so unconsciously intimate, that I saw Rebecca's expression soften. What about you, Emma? I asked. Still planning to save all the endangered species? One ecosystem at a time, she replied. I'm thinking about graduate school too, maybe focusing on conservation biology. Tyler and I joke that we'll be the world's most boring power couple, prosecuting environmental criminals and protecting wildlife. That doesn't sound boring at all, Rebecca said. It sounds like you're both going to make a real difference in the world. After dinner, we moved to the living room for pie and coffee. Tyler insisted on helping clear the table, and I noticed him carefully observing how things were organized, clearly trying to be helpful without being intrusive. Your mom is amazing, he said to Emma as we worked in the kitchen. I can see where you get your strength from. She likes you, Emma replied. I can tell. She's relaxed, which means she approves. How can you tell? Because she's not interrogating you about your intentions or your family background. Trust me, this is going well. When we rejoined Rebecca and Emma in the living room, they were looking through photo albums from Emma's childhood. Tyler settled beside Emma on the couch, listening attentively as Rebecca told embarrassing stories about Emma's various phases. The year she insisted on wearing a cape to school every day. The summer she tried to teach herself 7 different languages simultaneously. The brief period when she wanted to become a professional horse whisperer. Mom, you're supposed to be making a good impression, not humiliating me, Emma protested. But she was laughing. I'm showing Tyler what he's getting into, Rebecca replied. Full disclosure of your quirks. I already know about most of her quirks, Tyler said. Like how she organizes her bookshelf by color instead of the author, and how she can't fall asleep without checking that her alarm is set at least 3 times. That's not a quirk, that's responsible time management, Emma said. As the afternoon wore on, I found myself watching Rebecca's face as she observed Emma and Tyler together. I could see her gradually relaxing, letting go of her protective anxiety, and allowing herself to simply enjoy her daughter's happiness. Around 6 o'clock, Emma and Tyler announced they needed to head back to their hotel to prepare for their drive, back to Berkeley the next morning. The goodbyes at the front door were warm and genuine, with Tyler thanking Rebecca multiple times for the incredible meal and her hospitality. It was wonderful meeting you, he said, shaking her hand again. I hope we can do this again soon. You're welcome here anytime, Rebecca replied, and I could tell she meant it. Emma hugged me goodbye with surprising warmth. Take care of my mom, she said quietly. She deserves someone who appreciates how special she is. I'm working on it, I assured her. After they left, Rebecca and I stood in the sudden quiet of her house, surrounded by the aftermath of a successful family dinner. The dining room table was covered with empty dishes. The kitchen needed serious attention, and we were both exhausted from the emotional intensity of the day. Well, I said. How did that go? Rebecca collapsed onto the couch with a satisfied sigh. He's perfect. I mean, not perfect, but perfect for Emma. Did you see how he listened when she talked? How he didn't try to dominate conversations, or prove how smart he was? I saw. He's a good kid. And he's going to law school, and he has goals, and he makes Emma laugh. She paused, looking thoughtful. I think I was more nervous about this than she was. Probably. But you handled it beautifully. You made him feel welcome without being overwhelming, and you let Emma show off the relationship she's proud of. When did I get so lucky? She asked, settling against my shoulder. Lucky how? Emma found someone wonderful. You are exactly what I didn't know I was looking for. Everything fell into place when I'd stopped expecting it to. I kissed the top of her head, breathing in the scent of her shampoo mixed with the lingering aromas of our feast. Maybe it's not luck, Maybe it's just what happens when you're open to good things. Is that your philosophy of life? It's becoming my philosophy of life. I used to think happiness was something you had to chase or earn or deserve. But watching you with Emma today, seeing how proud you are of the woman you raised, being part of this family moment, it feels like happiness is just what happens when you stop being afraid of it. Rebecca lifted her head to look at me. Derek Sullivan, are you saying you're happy? I'm saying I'm happier than I've ever been. With you, with this, with the possibility of building something real together. Even with all my neurotic parenting anxieties? Especially with your neurotic parenting anxieties. They're part of what makes you such a good mother. She kissed me then, soft and slow and full of promise. When we broke apart, she was smiling. So what happens now? She asked. Now we clean up this kitchen disaster, open that bottle of wine Tyler brought, and figure out what we want to do with the rest of our lives. In that order? Definitely in that order. I learned a long time ago never to make major life decisions with dirty dishes staring at you. As we worked together to restore order to Rebecca's kitchen, I found myself thinking about the journey that had brought us here. 6 weeks ago, I'd been a single guy with a routine job and a half-finished novel, convinced that my best romantic years were behind me. A stupid joke in a broken elevator had changed everything, leading me to a woman who challenged my assumptions about what I wanted and showed me possibilities I'd never considered. "Hey, Rebecca," I said as she handed me a plate to dry. "Yeah? I'm glad your elevator got stuck. I'm glad you have terrible timing with age jokes. And I'm really glad you laughed instead of slapping me." "The day is young," she said with a grin. "Give me another reason." I set down the dish towel and pulled her into my arms, right there in her kitchen with the sunset streaming through the windows and the promise of tomorrow stretching out ahead of us. "I love you," I said, the words coming out easier than I'd expected. Her smile was radiant. "I love you too, Derek, even if you are practically a child at 35. Hey, I thought we were past the age jokes. We're never past the age jokes. That's how this whole thing started." And as she kissed me again, surrounded by the warmth of her home and the lingering joy of a day spent with family, I realized that sometimes the best stories begin with the worst possible opening lines. Sometimes the thing you think will ruin everything turns out to be exactly what you needed to find your way home. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.